Local Justice, presented by Elrod Pope Law Firm, serving our community since 1980. Here's your host, attorney Ben Leader.
Welcome to Local Justice, where we dive into the people and the issues impacting justice locally here in York County and beyond. Today, I'm honored to have with us a very special guest to me. He's been a close friend, a colleague, and a mentor of mine. He's been a pillar of our law firm for more than 20 years now. So I'm honored to introduce attorney Harold Staley to the show. Harold, thank you for having us.
It's good to be here, Ben.
Yeah, it's good to have you on, and look forward to letting the viewers getting to know Harold a little bit and learning a little about the law along the way. Let's dive right in, and I know you grew up in Moncks Corner. Let's talk a little bit about just your upbringing, kind of what your childhood was like, and what life in Moncks Corner was like.
It was a magical time, a lot simpler time, I think, in so many respects. I watch my kids today, and they're on their devices all day long. And, when I came up, I grew up in a neighborhood that was right between 2,000-acre plantations and on the Cooper River. And so I had as much of a Huck Finn childhood as you could possibly imagine. Growing up, playing on these plantations and swimming in the river, and it was just a real magical time, a simpler time,
Sure, and I know that you've been involved a lot in the community here in York County since you've made this place home, but your family was also very involved in your childhood in Moncks Corner. I think your dad did a lot with the athletic program. He was known as Big Harold back in the day, and you've now taken over that name as Big H, as we call you around the law firm.
Yeah, it was funny because growing up with a dad named Harold, my mother was always trying to really differentiate Big H and Little H, and I can't remember which friend that tagged us that, but I grew up basically being called Little H in my household, and Little Harold, Little H, but yeah.
And ultimately ended up at South Carolina, where I believe you walked on the football team. Is that right?
I did. Probably had no business being out there, but I was a long snapper in high school, and got offered a tryout and made the team. Was on the team for 3 years. It was a great time. Met a lot of my dear friends, today are from that period of time. But I'm not an athlete. Probably the only thing I could have possibly done was long snap, and but it was a great experience.
Absolutely. Most people that are attorneys, go from college to law school and then so on, but you had a little bit of an untraditional path. You ended up in Nashville, I believe, after undergrad and taught for a few years.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know, I played a lot of guitar growing up, really enjoyed music, and so I went to Nashville and played some bars and did some things like that just for fun. And it was a really great experience, met some really wonderful people. One of my best friends today dates back to when I was living in Nashville. But I was working on my master's degree at Middle Tennessee State while I was there, and ended up teaching. I was the in-school suspension teacher at Moses McKissick Middle School for about 2.5, 3 years. And that was a really, really eye-opening kind of experience, being in the classroom every day. Wouldn't trade that experience for anything. But, while I was there, I was young at the time and just started trying to think what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I toyed around with going back and getting a teaching certificate and maybe trying to coach. I love young people, I always have. Been very active in the mock trial program in South Carolina for many years. Just really enjoy the enthusiasm of youth. And so I did that for 3 years and then went to law school.
You ended up in law school in Michigan, I believe. Yep. And then back in South Carolina after law school, where you started working with solicitor at the time, Tommy Pope. Is that right?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I'll tell you, I applied to 2 schools, and the University of South Carolina had enough of me. I hold no ill will in my heart. I had a great experience at South Carolina, but wasn't quite competitive on the incoming class, and ended up going to a private school in Michigan, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I met my wife. who is a lot smarter than me, and we met our first semester in law school and have been together ever since. So really grateful for that experience. It's funny because sometimes in life, your biggest disappointments turn into opportunities if you view it the right way. And that was very disappointing when I didn't get in South Carolina, but it ended up being probably the best thing that happened to me.
That's great. And I know you spent some time clerking with Judge Dennis, and we've talked a lot about clerking on the show, and what a great experience that is for a young lawyer.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think as we get older in the practice, it's so important to try to pay it forward and to mentor young people and young lawyers. I have been so blessed in my life to have had some people that took the time, invested their time to help me develop. And it started with Butch Watson and Markley Dennis and Jack Landis, three people that I think the world of that, early on in my career really helped guide me and teach me how to practice the right way. And, I guess I'd clerked for a year with Judge Markley Dennis and worked for Butch for about a year and a half, and eventually my wife and I at the time we were dating, and it became pretty apparent that it was time to get married, and she had a better job than I did, made more money up in Charlotte, and so we decided to make this area our home. So I left, applied to go to work for Tommy Pope. That's how we met. I worked for him a little over a year in the solicitor's office here in York County.
And I want to dive a lot more into your time with Elrod Pope after the solicitor's office in our next segment, but it's not lost on me that you were also part of the reason Tommy ended up coming and joining Elrod Pope down the road a few years, so kind of come full circle there. But
sure.
We're going to take a brief break from the sponsors, and we'll be right back with more local justice with attorney Harold Staley here shortly.
As soon as I contacted Elrod Pope, they handled everything. Without Elrod Pope's help, I'd have been paying hospital bills for years to come. Elrod Pope just took the stress and they put it on their table and took it off mine.
Coming to Elrod Pope, I didn't have to worry about anything. Everything was taken care of. It put me in a real calm state because I had someone on my side. I knew that I was in the right hands. It felt great.
We know the type. You like to start early, finish late, make lemon squares, and make payments to the college fund from anywhere in the house. We know you rely on Comporium for the things you rely on most, like a view of the backyard. That's just a bunny, and hundreds of channels to watch, whenever you want. So you may think of us as just your internet company, but we're more like the I didn't know they could do all that company. Comporium, always ready.
Coke Zero is now Coke Zero Sugar, with great Coke taste. Some people were excited to hear the news, some were skeptical. So we're not gonna have the star of the show you're watching come out and say, "You'll love it." No special jingle written by this week's hottest pop star. No famous internet celebs who happen to be holding the label just so. Okay, maybe just one little pour shot. The only thing that will make you believe Coke Zero Sugar has great Coke taste is trying it yourself. Ice cold Coke Zero Sugar. Try one today.
Being there for someone in their time of need is what Green Funeral Home has done compassionately for 4 generations. It's a privilege we take very seriously.
We believe each life should be honored and remembered by family and friends. Whether you choose traditional burial in our chapel or another venue, or cremation provided by our on-site crematory, we will help guide you through each step to ensure your needs are met.
We are also available to discuss pre-planning. Peace of mind that you have helped your loved one by making those difficult decisions.
When the need arises, our family is here for your family.
Welcome back to Local Justice. I'm attorney Ben Leader, and today I'm here with my law partner and friend Harold Staley from Moncks Corner originally, but now calls Fort Mill home and has been a partner with Elrod Pope for more than 20 years now. We talked about your background, kind of what led you to this area and where you ultimately ended up at the solicitor's office, where I know you got a great deal of trial experience during your time there. You joined Elrod Pope in 2002, I believe. What was it about Elrod Pope that brought you to that firm, and who was involved back then? And tell us a little bit about that experience.
When I first left the solicitor's office, I was doing some criminal defense work with Mike Brown, but I knew I wanted to get into the civil arena. And I had met Tony Jones. Tony was initially who recruited me over to the law firm, and met Tony, and we had tried a case against one another, and he kind of started asking me what I was interested in, and I really wanted to get into civil litigation, to fight for people, people who had been injured and people who'd been killed, families, and just try to help them maneuver through the process. And so he recruited me over, and I talked a moment ago about how blessed I have been in my career. Probably one of the biggest blessings I ever had was being introduced to your dad, who became probably the most influential person in my career. I've had a lot of great people in my life, but no one has done more for me than Jack Leader. He was one of the finest men I have ever known in my life. And so again, I'm so blessed because I've had all these opportunities to work with really great people who took time, invested their time in me. And so came over to Elrod Pope, started working primarily, worked a lot with Luke at first, doing some comp, but eventually kind of evolved into just doing civil litigation with your dad. And your dad and I practiced together for 20-something years. I mean, I practically lived in his office, sitting on the couch or sitting in a chair. Your dad, before he passed away, gifted me his desk, which is one of my prized possessions. But on the front of it, it's so funny because it's all scuffed up and marked up. And it's from me. Over the years, I propped my feet up on his desk, and you can see 20-something years of just scuff marks from where I would go in there and talk to your dad about things going on in the firm and cases and things we were fighting for. So certainly just want to recognize him for the contributions he's had in my life.
Well, I appreciate that, and you've had some great mentors, but you've also tried to pay it forward too, and you've taken on that role for a lot of young students interested in law, and I know a big part of that's been mock trial experience. Tell us a little bit about the mock trial program.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when I came back from law school, and I'd mentioned Mark Dennis and Jack Landis, and Butch Watson, but Mark and Jack were the mock trial coaches in Moncks Corner at Berkeley High School. I was actually a participant in mock trial. Mark Dennis was my coach in high school in the mock trial program. And so we talk a lot about the solicitor's office and getting trial experience, but the truth is Mark Dennis and Jack Landis taught me how to try cases through the mock trial program. If you're a young lawyer and you really want to learn about evidence and learn how to present evidence and how to do a really good presentation in front of jurors, mock trial is just a wonderful, wonderful program that does that. And I counted up, I have over 20-something kids that I've coached over the years that are now lawyers.
Wow.
And I take a lot of pride in that. And Stephen Cox, a very dear friend of mine, we coach together here up in Fort Mill. He's another Moncks Corner product, and we're dear friends. And it's just a great, I have such fond memories working with all these young people, but also the program really just help hone skills. If you want to learn evidence, then teach it to a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And ironically enough, this, Garrett Johnson, who is our law partner, Garrett was one of my mock trial kids.
That's right.
That I coached. I met Garrett, I think he was 14 years old.
Wow.
And always sharp as a tack. He was as smart then as he is now. And so
the mock trial program is like the Nick Saban coaching tree of young lawyers across, South Carolina.
That makes me laugh because I'm not, Nick Saban, of course, is the GOAT, and you know how much I love college football.
That's right.
But mock trial is a wonderful program, and really encourage lawyers, if you haven't coached a team, to get involved in the law-related education program in South Carolina. It is really just a fantastic program.
And I think, your time and efforts that you put into that program was part of the reason you were awarded that Lawyer of the Year from the Lawyer Education Committee back in early 2000s.
Yes, I can't remember what year it was. Garrett Johnson was also recognized for his time. And it's an award the bar gives out once a year to lawyers that dedicate their time to really advancing the law-related education program in South Carolina. And yeah, that was really, really nice, something that I was honored to receive. And it's one of the few things I do have in my office that is prominently displayed.
That's great. Well, today, in today's world, you're handling all types of personal injury cases. You've been with Elrod Pope for more than 20 years now, and you do a lot of litigation as well as pre-litigation. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about kind of what your practice includes and what type of cases you handle?
Yeah. Well, you know, we do a lot of, primarily what we do is represent people who have been injured or killed in accidents. And, you know, it is a challenging profession because every day you're fighting to try to get people justly compensated for their losses. And, you know, I can't think of a better way to make a living than waking up every day, going to work, and trying to help people. And that is what drove me to want to get into this business, and it's what motivates me still to this day, is just the opportunity to try to help. It certainly has its challenges, you know. Every day we come to work and we're doing battle against insurance companies and advocating for people, and it can be exhausting at times, but the reward, you know, just the feeling that you have knowing that you're trying to make somebody's life better is pretty fantastic.
I could not agree more. You get to see the real impact you can have on people's lives. And
you know, a lot of times we start out, you know, particularly in wrongful death situations, is people want answers and want to understand why something happened. And so, you know, and it can be a real heartwarming process to see as you get answers and can explain to people what happened and why things happened, and ultimately have their loved ones remembered appropriately and make sure that, you know, they didn't die in vain. And so it's something we feel very passionate about, and just really feel blessed that I'm able to do this for a living.
And we're going to take another quick break from our sponsors right now. And in the last segment, I want to dive a lot deeper into some specifics about the types of personal injury law and some of the misconceptions surrounding it. So we'll be right back with more Local Justice with attorney Harold Staley. Thank you.
As soon as I contacted Elrod Pope, they handled everything. Without Elrod Pope's help, I'd have been paying hospital bills for years to come. Elrod Pope just took the stress and they put it on their table and took it off mine.
Coming to Elrod Pope, I didn't have to worry about anything. Everything was taken care of. It put me in a real calm state because I had someone on my side. I knew that I was in the right hands. It felt great.
At Palmetto Pride, we know we have a choice. The choice for a cleaner South Carolina. And it's an easy one at that. Don't litter. No grand gestures or heroic efforts here, but the outcome still has monumental impacts. When it comes to our state, every choice counts and every action matters. From the great outdoors to parks next door, from Main Street to your street. All it takes is a little bit of pride to keep South Carolina beautiful.
When a catastrophe hits, it can be a very stressful time for you. When you have trees on your house, when you have trees on your cars, and you don't know what to do, you call us.
We're not a 1-800 number, we're an 803 number. We've been in business for over 60 years because we take care of our clients. That means taking care of them during claim situations.
We're not 9 to 5, we're 24/7. We're gonna be there when you need us most. Gill Insurance, your local auto owner's agent. Understanding business is how we do business.
When it comes to prescription medications and health needs, Rock Hill residents have been turning to Good Pharmacy for over 50 years.
I've been coming to Good Pharmacy since we came to Rock Hill in 1984, and I would not change pharmacists for anything.
With their knowledgeable staff, you can always trust that your prescription will be filled with complete confidence and care for your health. Good Pharmacy, conveniently located at the corner of Ebenezer Road and Camden Avenue.
Welcome back to Local Justice. I'm attorney Ben Leader, and I'm here with attorney Harold Staley from the Elrod Pope Law Firm. Harold, thanks for being with us today. We were just talking a little bit about the types of cases you handle and the practice areas, and want to talk about some of the misconceptions of personal injury law, because there's a lot out there in today's world. And,
sure.
being a personal injury lawyer doesn't always come with the most welcome,
Sure.
connotations.
Yeah, ambulance chase. There are a lot of jokes about, lawyer jokes that exist, and they are misconceptions. I think the most classic example is how information can get misconstrued. We live in a time period where everything's a soundbite, a 10-second soundbite, and you can, in a 10-second soundbite or clip, make anything seem outrageous or inappropriate. You can do whatever you want, with a sound clip or a sound bite. The most classic example I like to use is the McDonald's case, the coffee case.
Sure, hot coffee case.
And you hear people all the time talk about, well, of course coffee's hot, but what people don't know, they've been fed something about, oh, there was a $3 million verdict. What they don't hear are the facts behind it, how that particular McDonald's had been cited on numerous occasions serving coffee that was 3 times industry standards, that it was coffee so hot that it actually melted and caused very severe burns, melted clothes. The fact that, they had opportunities to fix it, and what it really boiled down to is they were serving it so much hotter because their cup wasn't insulated enough to keep the temperature warm. And so, great example of that. One year, South Carolina, the mock trial case was the actual coffee case. And they had reached out to the lawyer that was involved in the case and got all the facts so that the case was really sound based on the factual basis of that real case. And I'll never forget the first day we started the class, I took a poll and I said, here's the general facts of the case, gave a soundbite. And I said, I want everyone to raise your hand if you think, McDonald's is responsible for these damages. And not a single kid in the mock trial program raised their hand. We dove into the case, once everybody learned the true facts, I took another poll a few weeks later and every single kid raised their hand.
Wow.
And it had totally flipped from everybody thinking something was outrageous to totally believing it was justified and that the plaintiff deserved to be compensated. And so, what we know as lawyers is the devil is in the details and the facts. You can make any argument you want, but facts are stubborn things. And so part of our job is making sure we go about finding what the true facts are behind a case, to make sure we can present that to a jury, to make sure that when that jury gets this case and goes back to decide what needs to be done, is that they understand exactly what the true facts are.
That's fascinating perspective and a great example to use, because so many people see headlines and numbers and that's all that's talked about, but they don't dive deep enough to truly understand the facts or the corporate wrongdoing that may have been involved. And in today's world, we hear about nuclear verdicts all the time. That term is thrown around a lot is a major problem. And I don't know that anybody realizes how hard it is for us to stand in front of.
Talk about misconceptions, right? Yeah. Everybody thinks there's this jackpot justice mentality that juries are giving outrageous, jury awards. But the fact of the matter is that doesn't exist. It certainly doesn't exist in York County and in South Carolina for the most part. We're a very conservative state, and the juries are made up of lay people like us. And so I can promise you, if you hear of a big verdict, there's probably a lot of reasons why it occurred.
That's right.
And so that's a real big misconception. Is that somehow these juries are just out of control and awarding, fortunes to people on cases where the damages don't warrant it. It's a big misconception. And the other big misconception, I think, is people don't understand that when we try cases, we're not allowed to go in and tell the jury, okay, this company has $5 million in insurance coverage, or this person, we're trying to collect their own insurance that protects them. They don't get told that. You walk into a jury and they think the nice lady sitting at the other side of the table, at the defense table, is having to write a check. And 99.9% of the time, that's not true, that there's insurance, but they don't get to hear that. That's another big misconception that exist, and things we have to try to overcome, is that.
That's right.
But it's certainly a challenge because the jury doesn't hear all that.
Right. I've joked around, I would invite anybody to stand in front of a York County jury and try to convince, 12 citizens here to award somebody something that they don't deserve or that doesn't have merit.
There's no doubt. One of the lines I use a lot with my clients is I will say, we got to get 12 random people, and I will tell them, I said, I tell you what I want you to do. The next time you go to the Harris Teeter or fill your car up with gas, I want you to pick the first 12 people you see, and then I want you to come back and talk to me. And sure enough, that exercise always does the same thing. Inevitably, they come back to my office, and they're like, yeah, there were several that worried me. And I was like, that's the issue with juries, is 12 random people. And, you get some strikes, but you don't get a lot. And so it's a tough process. By that, you've got to get a collective group of people to make a decision on how much money to award or if to award anything. And so it's certainly a challenge, and it's not a game of perfect. It's just not. It's a real challenge.
That's right. And, I think that's one of the reasons that we believe the jury system is great, and that juries generally do get it right, at the end of the day. And when laws are put into place that, prevent the jurors from really knowing what the truth is or really knowing what the facts are, or, limits what they can actually award people, or, subtracts money from what they think they're awarding people, it really takes the power away from, the jury and puts it in someone else's hands.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And it's hard. And the one thing I will tell everyone is, I think it was Ben Franklin that said the highest contribution one can make to his country, except to serve them in war, is to serve on a jury. I mean, it really is. When you talk about kind of Republican principles, giving the power to the people, there's no stronger form of government, and a collective voice is juries, because they determine what will be accepted in the community and what won't be. And so it's a real, just encourage people when you go to look at serving on a jury with a little bit, better attitude. I see a lot of times people trying to get out of service, because it is a time commitment, but it's so important. Such a critical part of having a democracy is having a strong jury system.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. And Harold, really enjoyed having you on the show and being able to chat.
It's
I feel like
pleasure.
we could go on for days here.
Sure.
But appreciate all your efforts and all that you have done to help injured people in York County for more than 20 years now, and hopefully going to be doing it for 20 more.
Well, we'll see. It seems like it's getting harder and harder. But thank you, Ben. It was a pleasure being here.
Yep. Well, that's it for today's episode of Local Justice. Thanks to Harold Staley for joining us today, and we'll see you next time, and stay safe out there. Thank you.
As soon as I contacted Elrod Pope, they handled everything. Without Elrod Pope's help, I'd have been paying hospital bills for years to come. Elrod Pope just took the stress and they put it on their table and took it off mine.
Coming to Elrod Pope, I didn't have to worry about anything. Everything was taken care of. It put me in a real calm state because I had someone on my side. I knew that I was in the right hands. It felt great.
Kidney disease is becoming more and more prevalent, especially with diabetes and hypertension. My training with kidney disease helps me to talk to patients and guide them through the steps that they can take, the changes that they can make into their lifestyles. And we have a dedicated team of providers, including dietitians and pharmacists that we work with to educate patients towards achieving that.
We know the type. You like to start early, finish late, make lemon squares, and make payments to the college fund from anywhere in the house. We know you rely on Comporium for the things you rely on most, like a view of the backyard. That's just a bunny, and hundreds of channels to watch, whenever you want. So you may think of us as just your internet company, but we're more like the I didn't know they could do all that company. Comporium, always ready.